What if I told you that everything you've learned about Atlantis, if you've learned anything at all, is only the faintest echo of a truth so vast, so disruptive, that it had to be buried beneath layers of myth, time, and silence? Atlantis was never just a lost island. It was a world, a civilization, a consciousness, a reality that once breathed with wisdom so advanced, it bordered on the divine, and that's precisely why it vanished. Not because it was a myth, but because it was forbidden to remember. In Plato's dialogues, Atlantis is mentioned briefly, like a whisper from the past. A highly advanced society that rose to power, then collapsed into the sea in a single day and night. Most dismiss it as allegory, a cautionary tale. But that's the lie. That's the veil draped over a deeper truth. Because across continents and cultures, from the Mayan Chilam Balam to the Egyptian temple of Edfu, there are echoes. Echoes of a time before the flood, before the fall, a golden age that modern history refuses to acknowledge. A time when humanity walked with giants, not in size, but in spirit. And that golden world, that luminous cradle of knowledge, was Atlantis. In this video, we are not going to rehash the mainstream theories or dive into hollow speculation. No, we're going to peel back the layers of time and deception. We will trace the fragments scattered across sacred texts, ancient maps, and spiritual traditions. We'll explore who the Atlanteans really were, what they knew, why they vanished, and why remembering them now might be more important than ever. You'll discover why the hidden history of Atlantis was erased, what esoteric teachings say about its fall, and how this ancient story holds the keys to your own spiritual awakening in the modern age. The truth was never lost. It was just hidden. Now, let us remember. To truly understand the mystery of Atlantis, we must first step outside the rigid frameworks of modern history and return to the ancient mind, a mind that did not separate science from spirit or mythology from memory. The earliest known reference to Atlantis comes from Plato in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, written around 360 BCE. In these texts, he recounts a tale passed down from Egyptian priests to the Athenian lawmaker Solon, centuries earlier. According to them, Atlantis was a powerful naval empire located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. It was said to have existed 9,000 years before Plato's own time. Most scholars stop there. They claim Plato fabricated the story, using Atlantis as a metaphor for hubris and political decay. But ancient wisdom traditions tell us something far more profound. You see, in the Temple of Edfu in Egypt, there exist inscriptions carved into stone that speak of a primordial island of the egg, a sacred homeland destroyed in a great cataclysm. This island of the egg was ruled by divine beings, the Neteru, who brought knowledge to the world after its fall. Sound familiar? Similar stories surface in the Vedas of India, in the Sumerian epics, in the Hopi and Aztec oral traditions. Nearly every ancient culture speaks of a time before the flood, a time of great knowledge, cosmic alignment, and divine order. These aren't isolated myths. They're fragments of a shared memory. Atlantis, then, is not just a lost city. It is a symbol of humanity's forgotten origin story. A memory encoded in our collective unconscious. A remembrance of a time when we were more in tune with the laws of the universe, before the descent into materialism and separation. Esoteric philosophies, particularly those found in Hermeticism and Theosophy, describe Atlantis not only as a physical civilization, but also as a stage in human consciousness. Helena Blavatsky, founder of the Theosophical Society, claimed the Atlanteans were the fourth root race, a spiritually and technologically advanced people who lost their way when ego eclipsed wisdom. According to these teachings, Atlantis fell not merely by geological disaster, but by a spiritual one, a disconnection from the divine source, a rebellion against the natural laws, what the ancients called Ma'at, Dharma, or the Tao. In other words, Atlantis drowned in its own hubris. Why was this knowledge buried? Because it contradicts the linear, materialist model of human evolution. It hints that we are not the peak of civilization, but rather survivors of a forgotten greatness. And if that's true, it means we carry within us not only the potential to repeat Atlantis' downfall, but also the power to reclaim its wisdom. This is why the story of Atlantis matters. Not because of where it was, but because of what it was. A mirror, a warning, and perhaps a roadmap home. Imagine a civilization where science was inseparable from spirit, where temples were not merely places of worship, but energy centers, built on ley lines, harmonized with planetary movements, and vibrating with sacred geometry, where sound, light, and consciousness were tools of healing, creation, and travel. This was Atlantis, not a fantasy but a frequency, not just a location, but a living memory embedded in the soul of the earth. According to esoteric traditions, the Atlanteans were master alchemists, not the crude medieval kind that sought to turn lead into gold, but true spiritual alchemists who understood how to transmute consciousness. They worked with crystalline technologies, the power of the pineal gland, and the universal laws that govern vibration, polarity, rhythm, and gender. In fact, many Hermetic teachings trace their origin not to Egypt, but to a time before Egypt, a time of light before the fall. There are whispers that Atlantis had vast crystal energy grids, capable of drawing power from the Earth's magnetic field and the sun itself. Structures that rival or even surpass modern nuclear technology, yet worked in harmony with nature rather than against it. Some believe these crystals were used to enhance consciousness, store data, and even communicate across vast distances, not unlike the Akashic records, the so-called cosmic internet of ancient times. But the brilliance of Atlantis was its downfall. As the Atlanteans evolved, a fracture emerged. One group remained aligned with divine law, seeking to evolve through inner mastery. The other, lured by power, began experimenting with life itself, genetic manipulation, hybridization, and attempts to control spiritual forces for egoic purposes. Sound familiar? The echo of this division exists today in the dual nature of our own world, light and shadow, expansion and control, wisdom and domination. The tale of Atlantis, then, is not just a lost chapter of human history. It is our story, playing out again on a grander scale. And just as in that ancient time, we now stand on the edge of a turning point. Now, here's where things get even more mysterious. According to certain esoteric sources, when Atlantis fell, not all was lost. The high initiates, those who had preserved the sacred knowledge, fled. Some went to Chem, which we now call Egypt. Others journeyed to the Andes, to Mesoamerica, to the Himalayas. They became the seed-bearers of civilization, the progenitors of what we now call mystery schools. Thoth, also known as Hermes Trismegistus, is said to have been one of these survivors. In the Emerald Tablets, he speaks of raising the pyramids by the power of thought and preserving the knowledge of Atlantis beneath the Sphinx. If that is true, then Egypt is not the cradle of civilization. It is a torchbearer of a far older light. This casts a new light on the flood myths found in every culture. In the Bible's tale of Noah, in the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, in the Hindu story of Manu, all recount a great deluge that wiped the earth clean. Yet few ask what came before the flood, what wisdom was lost or hidden. Atlantis, in this sense, was not merely punished by the gods, it was reset by cosmic law. A karmic balancing of forces gone astray. A civilization that forgot its origin in spirit and collapsed under the weight of its own brilliance misused. And now the cycle begins again. The question is, will we repeat the fall, or will we awaken before the flood? If Atlantis was more than a myth, if it truly existed as both a physical and metaphysical reality, then why has so much of its truth been concealed? Why has modern history dismissed it as fable, while countless ancient cultures speak of a world before this one? The answer lies not just in lost records, but in a deliberate forgetting. For centuries, those who held the remnants of Atlantean knowledge encoded it in symbols, myths, and sacred texts. The teachings were never destroyed, they were hidden in plain sight, veiled behind allegories, locked within secret societies, and only passed to initiates deemed ready. Because such knowledge, in the wrong hands, could destroy civilizations as it once did. Take, for instance, the symbol of the trident, often associated with Poseidon, god of the sea and patron of Atlantis. On the surface, it's just a weapon, but esoterically, it represents the triadic nature of reality: mind, body, and spirit; consciousness, energy, and form; creator, creation, and the created. To wield it is to master the forces of manifestation itself. Or consider the all-seeing eye, found not just in Egyptian temples, but mirrored in modern institutions. Some see it as a symbol of control, but originally it represented the awakened pineal gland, the inner eye of vision, activated by higher consciousness, a remnant of Atlantean mastery over the inner worlds. Even the biblical story of the Tower of Babel holds echoes of Atlantis, a society striving to ascend to heaven through technological power, a fall caused by pride and disconnection from the divine. Sound familiar? Atlantis, again, hiding behind the veil of metaphor. But here's where things get deeply unsettling. Some esoteric traditions suggest that Atlantis never fully disappeared, that certain bloodlines, secret orders, and hidden powers have preserved its darker knowledge, that beneath the world of politics and progress lies an ancient battle for control over consciousness itself, a hidden war not fought with weapons, but with frequencies, ideologies, and illusions. Could the rapid rise of AI, genetic modification, and consciousness-altering tech be echoes of Atlantean science resurfacing? Could humanity, once again, be toying with forces it barely understands? And yet, not all is shadow. Just as there were those in Atlantis who misused the mysteries, there were others who vowed to protect the light. These were the teachers of future ages: Zoroaster, Pythagoras, Isis, Thoth, Buddha. Their teachings are not random. They are echoes of a single ancient source, scattered across time like pieces of a divine puzzle. Each myth, each sacred site, each mystery school is a breadcrumb. The Sphinx facing east toward the rising sun, guarding secrets beneath its paws. The Mayan pyramids aligned with celestial bodies. The Tibetan texts that speak of star beings and inner earth civilizations. None of this is coincidence. It is a map, a memory, a reminder. And at the center of it all is Atlantis, not just as a civilization, but as a consciousness. A golden age template buried not only in ruins, but within us. For if the Atlanteans were truly advanced, their greatest creation would not be cities, it would be souls. Consciousness seeded into humanity, waiting for the moment of reawakening. What no one told you about Atlantis is this: you are not just a descendant of that ancient world. You are its echo, its redemption, its final chance. The fall of Atlantis was not the end. It was the beginning of a spiritual exile that continues to this day. And the longing so many feel, the ache for something lost, the fascination with ancient wisdom, is the soul remembering its home, its origin in a world of harmony, wisdom, and sacred power. We are not moving toward Atlantis. We are returning to it. It is one thing to hear the legend of Atlantis, and quite another to live its legacy. For those drawn to this forgotten world, not just by curiosity, but by an inner recognition, the time has come to translate myth into mastery. The first step is not to look outward, but inward. The Atlanteans, as preserved in esoteric teachings, did not separate the physical from the spiritual. They knew that the mind was a tool of alchemy, capable of shaping reality as much as stone or flame. To begin remembering their wisdom, one must first reclaim mastery over their own inner terrain. Begin with stillness. Set aside time each day to enter silence, not simply the absence of noise, but the presence of awareness. This is not traditional meditation for relaxation's sake. This is communion. Atlantis taught that within each of us lies a crystalline chamber, a metaphysical space often referred to in ancient Egypt as the Holy of Holies, within the Temple of Man. In today's language, it is the pineal gland, the seat of inner vision and higher knowing. By cultivating silence, we activate this dormant sense. Breathe with intention. Not just shallow, automatic breaths, but slow, rhythmic breathing that aligns with the Earth's resonance. Try inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4, exhaling for 4, and pausing for 4, what mystics have called the square breath. This mirrors the sacred geometry embedded in Atlantean teachings and begins the process of harmonizing body and spirit. Visualize a column of light descending from above your head, rooting deep into the Earth's core. This is the pillar of remembrance, a practice said to be used by Atlantean initiates to reconnect with their higher selves and the greater cosmic grid. As you draw this light into your being, affirm inwardly, "I remember who I am. I remember where I come from." Next, cultivate awareness of symbols. The Atlanteans spoke in a language of vibration and metaphor. Begin to pay attention to the recurring symbols in your dreams, surroundings, and even in architecture or art that you feel drawn to. Journal these. Reflect on them. What messages might they hold? What forgotten truths are whispering to you beneath their surface? If you seek to go deeper, create a space in your home, no matter how small, dedicated to awakening. A simple altar with crystals, geometric patterns, incense, or sacred texts can serve as an energetic anchor. This is not superstition, it is sympathetic resonance. What you surround yourself with becomes a mirror to what awakens within. One of the most powerful practices you can adopt is what mystics call living memory. This means walking your daily life with the awareness that you are more than flesh and bone. You are a continuum of spirit, echoing the wisdom of civilizations past. Speak, act, and choose from that space. Ask yourself before every decision, does this align with what the Atlanteans stood for? Wisdom, harmony, higher evolution. Beware of modern Atlantean traps, excessive technological dependency, disconnection from the earth, and the hunger for control disguised as progress. These were the very elements that led to the fall. If we are to inherit their legacy, we must not repeat their mistakes. And finally, seek community, not just for knowledge, but for resonance. Find those who are on the same path of remembrance. Engage in sacred conversations, share insights, meditate together, study ancient texts. Atlantis was not built alone, nor will it be remembered alone. The knowledge of Atlantis is not to be worshipped, it is to be lived. And as you awaken piece by piece, don't be surprised if the world around you begins to shift, subtly at first, then profoundly. Because to awaken the Atlantean memory is to become a beacon, calling others to remember too. Atlantis was never just a lost city buried beneath the waves. It was a mirror of human potential, both our rise and our ruin. Its memory lingers not just in ancient texts and submerged ruins, but in our DNA, our dreams, and the quiet longings we carry for a world that once lived in harmony with the cosmos. What you've just explored is not a history lesson. It is a call to remember what was once known, not as fantasy, but as a blueprint for spiritual evolution. The temples, the crystals, the technologies, they were outer manifestations of an inner mastery that the modern world has forgotten. And yet, the signs are returning. The earth herself is stirring. People across the globe are waking up, asking the deeper questions, feeling the same pull, the same whisper, remember who you are. This is not about reconstructing Atlantis in the outer world. It's about reigniting the Atlantean flame within. To walk as one who sees beyond the veil. To live as one who knows that matter and spirit are not separate, but sacred reflections of each other. As we close this journey, I leave you with a question, not for your mind, but for your soul. What if the fall of Atlantis wasn't just a warning, but a prophecy? And what if you, right now, are part of the generation meant to complete the circle, to learn from the past, rise above its errors, and build a new world rooted not in control, but in consciousness? Thank you for walking this path of remembrance. If this resonated with you, I invite you to explore further, reflect deeper, and share this message with others who are ready to remember. Atlantis may have fallen, but its spirit is rising again through you.